Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review this little video that I thought was very particularly interesting. And this is going to be talking about two or three, maybe even four of boxing's best fighters, but mainly two of them. Of course, Mr. Naoya Inoue, for those of you that know about him, he proved himself to be as one of the best fighters in the world. And I always thought that he was one of the better fighters in the world. But there's a difference between being one of the better fighters in the world and being very good to, borderline great versus very great or all-time great. And I'm not really sure if I can call Inoue all-time great as of yet, just because the resume is lacking a little bit. But if you were to put him there, I would somewhat understand. Naoya Inoue definitely was extraordinarily dominant in the Stephen Fulton fight. And that was a fight that I actually predicted Inoue to lose. I thought that it was going to be somewhat competitive, but I did think that Fulton was going to outbox him. I thought that the size and I thought that the boxing ability of Stephen Fulton, I thought that it was going to give Inoue a lot of problems. But in two of the fights this year, between that of Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. and also that of Inoue and Stephen Fulton, they had two of the best performances, and they improved on skill sets that I did not think they were going to be able to improve upon. Inoue was able to massively improve his, distance of range or his judging of range, within that fight, which he was never bad at it. It's just that it's a bit of a different story when you're in the ring against someone that has a high boxing IQ like that of a Stephen Fulton. And then, of course, he also improved his head movement massively. As for Terrence Bud Crawford, he also improved his defense in that fight. When it came down to it, it looks like his chin was even better when it came down to it, and his punching power was even greater than what it seemed like it regularly was. So, certainly just goes to show you that a lot of the times, certain fighters or certain athletes, when the lights are on them, certain guys, they crumble under that pressure. Certain guys, they turn into a diamond in the rough, or, they basically shine under those lights. Others fizzle, others shine. Both Inoue and Terrence Bud Crawford shined within this year of their fight, so you have to give them a lot of credit. But the question is now, of course, about Mr. Naoya Inoue, what really is next for him? Now, of course, what's next for him is going to be that fight, I believe, at the 122-pound weight division against that one Filipino fighter, which I have no doubt that he's more than likely going to beat. I just don't think that that Filipino fighter is anywhere near the same caliber of Mr. Naoya Inoue. And more than likely, Inoue, right alongside with Terrence Bud Crawford, is going to become the second person in men's boxing history that is going to become undisputed in two separate weight classes. And of course, a lot of people would also mention Clarissa Shields as a third person, but of course, in female boxing, for her particular weight classes. But Shakur Stevenson said, as of recent, who of course also is another one of the world's top boxers in the world, he stated that he wouldn't mind fighting that of Naoya Inoue at one point in time if Inoue were willing to move up. Very interesting. But let's get straight into it. We're going to review a video by that of AKHi TV. Let's head straight into it.
So recently, Shakur Stevenson came out where he called out Inoue. Shakur said that Inoue is a hell of a fighter. Tell him to come up and fight me. Shakur also hesitated and implied that he's willing to go to Japan to make the fight happen. However, he wanted to leave that for negotiations. Check it out.
Man, tell him come up and fight me.
Would you go to Japan?
I would definitely. I ain't gonna set myself up. We'll see if the negotiations happen.
Right.
But tell him come up and fight me. I love to fight anyway.
And for those of you that did not hear Shakur Stevenson, they asked, would you take the fight in Japan? And he said, I'm not sure. I don't want to set myself up. It's just very particularly interesting that a lot of these channels or certain people, they always love to bitch, moan, and complain when certain fighters like Canelo, or Lomachenko or Fury or Usyk, when they like to have certain things in their advantage. But no one ever bitches and complains that all these foreign fighters, they always have to be on that of enemy lines or always on that, in American territory. Like, no one, ever complained when Sergey Kovalev had to fight Andre Ward on that of American soil. No one ever complained when Tyson Fury, even in that first horrid decision against Deontay Wilder, had to fight Deontay Wilder 2 more times, I believe, in that of Las Vegas. No one complained. So, once again, it's just very interesting. But anytime Anthony Joshua wants to fight Deontay Wilder in the UK, or he wants to fight somewhere in Saudi Arabia, or Inoue wants to fight someone in Japan, there's always an issue. You know, it's just interesting.
He's a hell of a fighter. I think, honestly, he probably one of the fighters I've been watching the most lately, so I give him his credit for his skills, his speed, his power, everything is tremendous. But, I think he's just a little too small.
Was you surprised the way he beat Cool Boy stuff?
Was I surprised? 50-50 with that. I kind of could have seen that. Like, I kind of seen that he was that skillful. But I think maybe with Cool Boy with that weight, he was coming down from a lot of weight. That probably was a bit of a problem.
Stephen Cool Boy Fulton, I believe, was a champion at 122 pounds, so it was not the weight. And I like Shakur Stevenson, but he gets on this bullshit sometimes about, certain fighters and why they lost. Overall, like, oh, Canelo, he looked very limited in that fight against Jamel Charlo, and now this. And I like Shakur Stevenson. He's a very, very talented and a great young fighter. But no, Stephen Cool Boy Fulton did not lose because of the weight. He lost because he was in the ring against that much more of a skilled fighter. And Fulton was actually bigger than that in Naoya Inoue. It just goes to show you that some of these guys, like some of these boxers, and who knows if Inoue is on some sort of performance-enhancing drugs or who knows. But, I'll give Inoue this amount of credit. I have not seen him associated with that of the snack program, like that of Shakur Stevenson or Terrence Bud Crawford, associated with that of Victor Conte, who was a former, alleged former anyway, supplier overall, of PEDs to a lot of the world's top athletes. Do I believe that he still does it? Absolutely. When it comes down to it, and a lot of people believe it too, because they see a difference in certain physicalities of fighters, including Caleb Plant, Terrence Crawford, Shakur Stevenson, once they are associated with that of the snack program. So it's just very interesting that almost no one ever mentions that, because if this were Usyk or Tyson Fury or Gennady Golovkin, it's basically what all these LDBC and new media channels will be talking about. It just is what it is. But of course, none of those fighters have been caught. But in a way, when it comes down to it, who knows if he's on some sort of PEDs or not. But certain fighters out there, like Inoue, Canelo, certain other fighters out there, they're just not only tremendous boxers, but they're also tremendous athletes. Terrence Bud Crawford, they can move up the weight classes and they can usually handle themselves quite well. Now, the question will be about Mr. Inoue. Excuse me. And I have no doubt that one of these times Inoue probably is going to suffer a loss in his career, just because I think Inoue is going to try his best to move up the weight classes. And I have no doubt that one day he's going to try and get up to 130 or 135. I think that more than likely he can potentially win a title at 130. But 135, I think, might be pushing it a little bit. Because when you talk about the 135-pound weight division, it's almost like that of the 168-pound weight division. There's a lot of fighters there that could easily be fighting at 140, potentially even at 147. So that's a very difficult division for the smaller fighters. It was very difficult even for the exceptionally skilled fighter Vasily Lomachenko, when it came down to it. And Lomachenko, he's probably about a natural 130-pounder, and Inoue is even smaller than that. I'm not even sure if he's a natural 122-pounder, and that's the division that he's at right now. So, once again, we'll see what happens, but in my view, that's probably pushing it just by a little bit. But I would love to see Inoue in fights, up there. I would love to see him against Emmanuel Navarrete or Oscar Valdez. Maybe one of these days, Shakur Stevenson, Gary Russell Jr. I would love to see him in any one of those fights.
At the end of the day, even though Inoue surprised us all with his spectacular performance over Fulton.
Well, I'll say this. He surprised me a little bit. But I can't say that he surprised everybody, because there was a lot of people in my comment section that did predict that Inoue was just going to fold Stephen Fulton over. I did not predict that, because I thought that the size and I thought that the skill set, I thought it was going to throw Inoue a little bit off, and I thought that it was at least going to be a fight 7 rounds to 5 that could have went either way. It was not a competitive fight at all. And certain people say that they gave Stephen Fulton, a couple rounds here or there, possibly, a couple rounds in the fight. I didn't give him a single round. Maybe one round, maybe like the 7th round, but other than that, no. And I believe that Fulton ended up getting knocked out within 8 rounds in that fight. If I'm wrong about that, someone correct me.
Ask him to move up 3 divisions to fight Shakur. is a tall order for anybody. Only Crawford can.
And that's not really even just 3 weight divisions. That's almost like 4. Because once again, Inoue is not a natural 122 pounder. He just isn't. So to ask for Inoue to move up and to fight someone like Shakur Stevenson, I just don't see that as very realistic. Now, do I think that the fight could later on happen? We'll see. But Shakur Stevenson, in my view, is eventually going to move up to 135 anyway. So I just don't see the fight happening. Not at the moment.
Pull something like that against Canelo. However, even that has to.
And AKHi TV said that only Terrence Bud Crawford can pull something off like that against Canelo Alvarez. Do I believe that Terrence Bud Crawford is going to pull something like that off against Canelo Alvarez? No, I don't. And once again, Canelo Alvarez is not really a natural super middleweight. He's really more of a middleweight. Now, in terms of rehydration and in terms of weight, is Canelo Alvarez a little bit heavier than some of those other middleweights? Yeah, he's a little bit heavier. Like I said, Canelo and Javante Tang Davis, they're very similar to where, they're a little bit shorter and they don't have the longest reach. They don't have the biggest stature. But in terms of girth and in terms of thickness, they have it. They're just that type of fighter when it comes down. Almost a little bit like Khabib Nurmagomedov, with that of the 155-pound weight division. He's a natural lightweight, but if he wanted to fight at 170, he probably could. But, with his size and stature, he's probably around a natural lightweight, kind of like that. Where Canelo, he's probably around a natural middleweight, maybe a little bit heavier, than your average middleweight, But that's why I said when Jermell Charlo ended up moving up, I didn't really count it as a legitimate 2 weight classes because, once again, Canelo is not really a natural super middleweight. He's not as big as Caleb Plant. He's not as big as Danny Jacobs. He's not as big as Andrade. He's not as big as Jermall Charlo. He's not as big as David Benavidez or Bivol. He's not as big as any of those guys.
Makes sense. Canelo Alvarez is one of the biggest names in the sport. He's also undisputed, which is equivalent to Javante.
Let me rewind that also a little bit.
However, even that has to make sense. Canelo Alvarez is one of the biggest names in the sport. He's also undisputed, which is equivalent to Javante today, who is the current face of boxing, being undisputed.
No, Javante Tang Davis is not the current face of boxing, but he is getting there. And you notice that these guys always have to speak something into existence. They almost have to do it like repeated propaganda with like posters. When it comes down to it, they always have to speak it into existence because they know that it isn't true. When it comes down, they know that it isn't true. That's why they always say this shit about Javante Tang Davis, the face of boxing, Deontay Wilder, overall, the face of the heavyweight division, all this sort of stuff. And don't get me wrong, Javante, is he certainly one of the faces of boxing? Would he be one of the, a part of the big 3-headed dragon if we were going to talk about, the top 3 pay-per-view draws in the sport, or something like that? Yeah, for sure, no doubt about it. He'd be right behind Canelo Alvarez. But right now, I still have to give Canelo Alvarez a little bit of the favor in terms of the face of boxing because, I'm sorry, but just 1 million pay-per-view buy isn't going to cut it. Now, maybe if his next pay-per-view, let's just say he fights someone and it isn't that great, and that's more than likely because let's be real about Javante Tang Davis. His resume, in my view, is a little bit limited. It's a little bit not so deep in terms of the depth of the names on his resume. But, Javante Tang Davis, let's just say that he fought someone like an Isak, Piple, Cruz, or an Emmanuel Navarrete next. Let's just say he fought someone like that. And if it did, 600 to 700,000 pay-per-view buys, I'd be like, you know what? Okay, there you have a legitimate argument to say that Javante Tang Davis, maybe he has finally overtaken Canelo Alvarez as the face of boxing. But the problem is that, the Ryan Garcia fight was several years in the making. It was a fight that really, was several years in the making. Both Ryan Garcia and Javante Tang Davis, they were very heavily promoted, on social media within that of the boxing scene. So pretty much almost every casual fan knew them. Not even people that just watch boxing, but a lot of casual fans, a lot of people that don't even watch boxing. They knew who both of those guys were. And Dante and a lot of these other guys, they can claim, that doesn't even make any sense because Ryan Garcia wouldn't have done it without, Javante Tang Davis. So if Ryan Garcia, gets a fight against someone else, that he's going to do 1 million pay-per-view buys in his next fight. Like, that doesn't even make any fucking sense. The point is that you need 2 stars or you need 2 popular candidates to make a big bang. And that's the main point of it. So Javante Tang Davis and Ryan Garcia, that was an extraordinarily big fight. When you talk about just the draw and the hype that was behind that fight. You know, sure, there was really no titles on the line, but it was a very big hype. It would be almost like Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. Neither one of those guys have belts at the moment, but it would still, I promise you, probably do over 1 million pay-per-view buys just because of the attraction that that fight would get, you know, or the attention, no doubt about it. But the problem is with Javante Tang Davis, to claim him as the face of boxing, I need to see more on his average pay-per-views than just 2,500, you know, 200,000 and 250,000 pay-per-view buys, because that's what he's been averaging. And those are pretty decent numbers compared to a lot of other fighters out there. But I can't claim he as the face of boxing when Canelo, he's fighting guys like John Ryder, and he's getting about 300,000 to 350,000 pay-per-view buys with someone like John Ryder, who's not extraordinarily well known. So you have to compare it with similar matches and what they do on average. And at the moment, Javante Tang Davis, he's had a very big pay-per-view, but on average, he has not surpassed Canelo as the face of boxing yet.
Then it will make sense for Inoue to move up 3 divisions to fight Javante, perhaps. However, Shakur doesn't bring anything to the table at the moment in time. Shakur is not even a champion at 135 at the moment in time. Soon, he's going to...
I agree. And, you know, we should also keep that same energy when it comes to Isak Piple Cruz. Now, to be fair, Isak Piple Cruz is in that same position. You know, and Isak Piple Cruz, he claims he wants a title shot. Shakur Stevenson could be the way to get it. So it's not like the energy is completely the same. Isak, of course, one could say has more of a responsibility, of course, to fight him than the lower weight class fighters. Of course, that's obvious. But, you know, a lot of people don't understand that when it comes to a fight like this, you have to bring something to the table. And, you know, beating Shakur, of course, would give Isak Piple Cruz a title shot. But Isak Piple Cruz is not looking for someone like Shakur Stevenson at the moment. He's looking for an immediate title shot. Now, in my view, if you really want a title shot, and if you're truly serious about one, you're going to try and take that fight of a Shakur Stevenson because you believe that you can beat the top guys. But a lot of those guys, they don't want to face Shakur Stevenson because they realize that he's a very, very big threat, and he's extraordinarily talented, he's extraordinarily crafty, and he's very difficult.
Be the WBC champion. But that's just one belt. Inoue can move up to 126 or 130 and win a belt easily there. We all know Inoue is chasing undisputed. Just like Terrence Bud Crawford, Errol Spence, Canelo, Devin Haney, Jamel Charlo, and all of the fighters that want to be recognized as great fighters in the sport of boxing. In fact, Inoue's next fight is actually for undisputed at 122. I believe he's fighting for undisputed.
When you talk about fighters in the current age of boxing, when you just talk about my top 10 pound-per-pound list, there's a reason why I have these 5 fighters locked within my top 5 pound-per-pound list, because these are the only 5 fighters that you can claim are all-time great fighters. There's Alexander Usyk, there's Tyson Fury, there's Canelo Alvarez, there's Terrence Bud Crawford, and there's Naoya Inoue. Any other fighter that is within the scene of the top 10 pound-per-pound today, you cannot call them all-time great fighters. You can call them great fighters. You can call them very good. You can call them borderline great fighters. You cannot call them all-time great fighters. You know, that includes, excuse me, that includes that of Devin Haney. That includes that of Shakur Stevenson. That includes that of Dimitri Bivol or Beterbiev. That includes that of Jamel Charlo or Teofimo Lopez, Josh Taylor, whoever the hell else you have on your top 10 pound-per-pound list, whoever you have there. The only 5, once again, that I say that could possibly claim all-time great credit are Crawford, Inoue, Fury, Canelo, and Usyk. Those are the only ones.
In December. Now, if Shakur was undisputed at 135, that's a different story. Then he will have something that Inoue wants. But at the moment in time, Shakur has absolutely nothing. Nada. Not a single thing. Therefore, this is nothing but hype.
I agree, and let me also state this. I'm not really a fan of a lot of these fighters moving up 2 to 3 weight classes out of nowhere. I'm not a fan of that move because I don't think that it's really smart on either end. If the smaller guy ends up beating the bigger guy, then the bigger guy is going to be known for losing to a guy that moved up multiple weight classes. Of course, it would help out the smaller guy's career, but how many times has a guy truly moved up 2 weight classes where he was not anywhere near that weight or not really that weight and he actually was able to pull off the fight. Not very often. Not very often. Just out of nowhere. Roberto Duran is one of them. Shane Mosley, of course, was another. And there might be a couple of others. But other than that, not a whole lot really comes to mind. And some, of course, may say Floyd Mayweather Jr., against Canelo or some other guys. But and Floyd, don't get me wrong, he's not really a 100% natural welterweight. He's probably more of a natural 140-pounder. Some may say, even in terms of weight, he's probably more of a natural 135-pounder, which is fair. But combined with his height and reach, I would probably give him around a natural 140-pounder. But Floyd was at least a little bit more adjusted to those weight classes. I'm not a big fan of these fights where these fighters are moving up 2-3 weight classes. I just think it's stupid. I don't think that it really helps out the sport. I don't think it really does anything for either of their careers. And it could potentially shorten the lifespan, especially of the smaller guys' career. So I don't see Inoue doing that. I think Inoue is going to try to accomplish as much as possible. I think he's going to go for the, the unification of the 122-pound weight division, which I believe he more than likely is going to get. And then more than likely going to try to go for the unification of 130 pounds. And then after that, potentially, or not 130, 126, and then 130, and then, of course, if that ends up happening, then we can start talking about a Shakur Stevenson, versus Naoya Inoue fight. Then we can start talking about that fight, but not until.
However,
And I'm also not a big fan of the Terrence Bud Crawford versus Canelo conversations. I'm not a big fan of those because what really is going to happen in that fight? If Canelo beats him, then he beat the much smaller man. And if Terrence Bud Crawford beats him, of course, it means great history. But how likely is that to happen?
see Inoue being interested.
And especially with Terrence having so many great fights at 154 and even, who knows, potentially 160. Go after those fights first.
In the Javante fight, perhaps at a catch weight of 130 or 130 something, or even 135, if the money is right. Even then, that's still a big jump for Inoue. Since the Javante fight,
It would be a humongous jump because, once again, Inoue is not even a natural 126-pounder. Javante Tang Davis easily fits in at the 135-pound weight division. And in terms of weight, he probably could fight at 140. Once again, he's a lot like a smaller version of Canelo Alvarez, where, he's probably a natural 135-pounder. He's girthier than a lot of those guys, and he weighs more than a lot of those guys. That's why at times he's missed weight. But, with his height and his reach, he's always going to have a little bit of a problem, probably within the higher weight classes, or, it makes him more of a natural 135-pounder. So,
is not going to be easier than the Shakur fight. Heck, as far as I know, it might be even more difficult since Javante could knock anyone out with one single punch, let alone a fighter that's moving.
I agree. And Inoue is another one of those fighters that usually can knock out anyone with one punch. But when you're moving up 3 weight divisions, especially in one jump, that's a completely different level when you talk about just moving up 1 weight class.
Up 3 weight divisions. Furthermore, if Inoue offers Shakur a 75-25% split, or any one of the offers Devin Haney offered Shakur, that being the $3.5 million flat fee, which is Shakur's biggest payday, or 75-25% split on everything, pay-per-view, so on and so forth, in the USA, will Shakur be willing to fight Inoue? In my opinion, absolutely. Of course, Shakur is not going to admit it since that's going to make him look bad. However, I truly believe Shakur will take the fight in a heartbeat, which is why if Shakur was interested in the Inoue fight to begin with, he should have had accepted the Devin Haney fight for undisputed for his biggest payday. There's no...
Well, let me at least give AKHi TV a little bit of credit there for kind of claiming that Shakur Stevenson, that he should have took the Devin Haney fight if he was super serious about undisputed. Now, listen, I'm also going to state this. I'm not usually a big fan of when people go on these narratives and say, you should have taken the fight even though you were offered, 25% and all this other stuff. Listen, I get it. The only time I think that I've ever really kind of got after someone like that was with Demetrius Boo Andrade. And I understand that he felt that he was getting lowballed. But, dude, you were getting absolutely no offers. Both Shakur Stevenson and Javante Tang Davis, I think that they both more than likely are going to get more offers a little bit later on down the line. I understand why Shakur Stevenson didn't take the deal, because he realizes that Devin Haney, that even though he probably thinks he's going to win, that it's still a very potentially dangerous fight, and that, it's good to get paid, no matter what the outcome is, just in case of anything, because you never know what's going to happen. So I understand. I understand both sides. If you believe that, hey, Shakur, you should have taken the fight, if you truly believe that you're going to win, and if you're also on the side of, they probably should have offered him a little bit more, I understand. Personally, I don't remember what all Devin Haney offered him. I think apparently 25%. I think personally, in my view, that's a little bit low, in my personal view, but, is what it is. Devin Haney is the undisputed champion at 135.
Justifying that, since if he did so and actually managed to win, Shakur will be the number 2 pound for pound and the third most.
I don't think that Shakur Stevenson would be the number 2 pound per pound, but he would certainly debatably be within that top 5 range. Once again, when you talk about top 2 pound per pound, you're talking about fighters like that of Canelo, Terrence Bud Crawford, Usyk, Fury, and that of Naoya Inoue. I don't think that I would quite claim that Shakur would be top 2, but of course we all know, LDBC and new media, they have to try to make their top 10 pound per pound list look as African American as possible. And listen, I have no problem once again with putting African American fighters on a top 10 pound per pound list if you have a great criteria and if it's logically and thoroughly deserved. But these guys just like to try to put any black fighters that they can on their list because they don't like certain fighters like Inoue or that of Fury or Usyk or Canelo on their top 10 pound per pound list. Remember, they had Jermell Charlo potentially within their top 5 pound per pound. They didn't even have Canelo within their top 10 pound per pound ever since his Dimitri Bivol loss. Remember that.
Popular fighter in the sport, right behind Javante and Canelo. Additionally, he will have the fighters that's running away from him, from Lomachenko, Zabeta, Piple, Cruz, Kambosos, so on and so forth, knocking on his door, being desperate to fight him. That's good enough reason to take whatever to fight Devin Haney for undisputed, let alone Shakur's biggest payday of $3.5 million flat fee or a 75-25% split. Heck, he could have even had Inoue attention. Even Inoue would have had wanted to fight him then. Instead, by Shakur turning down Devin Haney's undisputed fight, he's going to have a very hard time finding a significant fight. Good luck with that, especially with all of the talent leaving the division. With the facts being laid out, drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe below.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video. I just thought that was very particularly interesting. Do I think that an Inoue versus Shakur Stevenson fight would be realistic? No. I don't think that it would be very realistic. But I am going to be very interested to see what Mr. Inoue does. I don't even remember how old he is. I think that he's about 30 years old. He could easily, in my view, he's going to become more than likely undisputed. Of course, never underestimate a fighter. Anything could happen, so I guess you never know. But I do believe that Inoue, he always takes his fights seriously. And I believe that more than likely he is going to be superior to this fighter that he's getting in the ring with. As for 126, we'll see what threats await him there when it comes down to it. And then, of course, at 130, which will probably even be a bigger jump, and there'll be a little bit more talent there, debatably. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to be very interested to see what Inoue does, especially in these next few years. It's going to be very particularly interesting. As for Shakur Stevenson, we'll see what fights he gets in. I know that his next fight is against that one Dominican fighter. I've never been super impressed with the Dominican fighters. They have a certain amount of heart, and they can be a little tough, but I've never seen a great coordinated fighter from the Dominican Republic. I've just never seen it. There's never, ever been a great fighter from the Dominican Republic that I've ever personally seen. So, we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it. We'll see what happens with this. Very interesting. That's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much, and I'll talk to you all later.